8 minutes before departure, the cabin felt calm in that artificial way planes always do, like everyone's pretending we're all equals for a while, and I remember thinking how strange it was that peace can exist right before something breaks. I was already seated, jacket folded neatly, phone face down, just breathing because flying has always done that to me. Slowed my thoughts reminded me that for a few hours the ground can't reach you. That's when I heard it. Excuse me. Not loud, not rude, just sharp enough to cut through the hum. The flight attendant stood there smiling with her lips but not her eyes and asked the question I'd heard too many times in my life to mistake for coincidence. Are you sure you're supposed to be sitting here? That's the hook right there. Because nothing pulls you out of your body faster than realizing you've been judged before you've said a word. I handed her my boarding pass still warm from my palm. She glanced at it barely a second, then looked back at me like the paper hadn't said what it clearly said. First class, paid, confirmed. She nodded slowly and said, "We'll just double-check," and the air shifted. Conversations paused. Someone stopped laughing. A phone screen went dark. I stayed quiet because silence has been my shield since I was young, since I learned that explaining yourself too quickly only makes people think you're guilty of something. I watched her walk away, and I felt that familiar mix of embarrassment and anger, the kind that sits in your chest and asks which one you're going to feed. I chose patience. I always do at first. She came back with another attendant, this one older posture-stiff clipboard tucked tight like a rulebook. They asked again. Same question, different tone. "Can we see your ticket one more time?" I gave it to them. Again. They whispered, not quietly enough. I caught the words probably moved themselves and something about keeping things orderly. Order. Funny word. It usually means keeping people like me in places other people find comfortable. Behind me, I noticed a guy lift his phone pretending to text, except the camera lens was aimed straight ahead. I didn't know it yet, but that little red dot was about to become the loudest thing in the cabin. I shifted in my seat, adjusted my cuff, reminded myself to breathe. They told me to keep my boarding pass visible. Visible for who, I wondered. For the paper, or for me. Then came the first real sting. Over the intercom, the captain's voice crackled through calm and detached and said, "Sir, please calm down." I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't moved. But there it was. A public correction for behavior I hadn't shown. The cabin went silent, that thick silence that sticks to your skin. I felt heat rush up my neck. Not rage, yet, just disbelief. I said evenly, "I am calm." No response. The intercom clicked off like a door being shut. They offered to move me to another seat until things were sorted out. That phrase, "until things were sorted out," is one I've learned to translate. It means, go somewhere else so we don't have to look at this. I declined. Politely. Firmly. I stayed seated. And that's when the paper fell. A manifest slipped from the clipboard, landing near my shoes. I bent down, picked it up, and there it was in ink next to my name. Verify possible fraud. Fraud. Over a seat I had paid for. I folded the paper slowly and slid it into the seat pocket. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Minutes passed. The plane doors closed. That metallic click echoed like final judgment. I felt the vibration as the engines powered, and for a second I thought, this is it, they're really going to do this, lock us in with their assumption and fly away. The phone behind me was still recording. I could feel it without turning around. The cabin had turned into a stage, and nobody knew how to stop the play. Then something changed. A murmur rippled forward. Whispers moved faster than announcements ever do. Someone up front said my last name out loud, unsure, like they were testing it. Another voice replied sharper now. "That's the company." I saw the attendant's shoulders stiffen. Her radio chirped. Once, twice. She stepped away, face pale, eyes darting. In a building far from that plane, someone finally connected the dots. The same dots I'd spent years watching people refuse to see. My company. Our company. The one whose name was printed on contracts on aircraft leases on half the fleet they were sitting in. The irony was almost funny, except it wasn't. Because the truth shouldn't need power to be believed. The engine slowed. The plane lurched slightly, not forward but back into stillness. The intercom crackled again. Different tone this time. Hold position. A pause. Do not proceed. The cabin exhaled all at once like everyone had been underwater without realizing it. The door reopened. Light poured in harsh and real, washing over the seats that had just become a courtroom. The captain stepped out, no longer just a voice, and asked to speak privately. I shook my head. Here is fine, I said. Everyone's already involved. I stood, then, not abruptly, not to intimidate, just enough to reclaim my height. I said what I'd been holding back the entire flight. We didn't come here to prove who we are. We came here to see how you treat people when you think it doesn't matter. No one clapped. This wasn't that kind of moment. The flight attendant looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, not as a problem, not as a seat assignment, but as a person who had just held up a mirror. She apologized. Quietly. Not perfectly, but honestly enough that it landed. I told her something that surprised even me. You didn't embarrass us. You embarrassed your process. She nodded, eyes glassy like the words hurt because they were true. The flight was officially grounded. An internal review announced. Phones buzzed. The guy behind me lowered his hands, shaking like he hadn't expected the story to turn while he was still filming. People started talking now, softly processing what they'd just witnessed. Someone said they were sorry. I told them not to be. I told them to remember. When most of the cabin emptied, I stayed seated for a moment, staring at the crease in my boarding pass, thinking about all the times I'd folded myself smaller to fit someone else's comfort. The seat number above me didn't feel like a prize. It felt like a reminder of how quickly dignity can be questioned and how powerful it is when it isn't surrendered. As I walked off the plane, the morning air hit my face cold and clean, and I realized my hands were still shaking, not from fear anymore, but from release. Someone from the crew muttered another apology. I looked at them and said, "Make sure the next person doesn't need one." Here's the part that sticks with me. None of this had to happen. It only escalated because no one stopped to ask themselves why they were so sure I didn't belong. And yeah, the ending was satisfying, the reversal the moment when the system tripped over its own bias. But that's not the win. The win is visibility. Because for every story like mine that gets recorded, there are dozens that don't. Dozens where people swallow it and move seats and carry the weight home with them. So let me ask you something. If you were sitting there watching it unfold, would you have spoken up, or would you have stayed quiet and told yourself it wasn't your place? And if you've ever been on the other side, the one holding the clipboard, the rule book, the authority, what assumptions have you made without realizing it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue if you need to. Share a story if you have one. And if this made you uncomfortable, don't click away. Sit with that, because discomfort is where change actually starts. Like, share, subscribe. Do whatever keeps these conversations alive, because silence is easy and justice never is.